everyone. Today we're going to be talking about 3 important lessons from 3 very valuable teachers across the last 3 millennia. We're talking about Lord Shri Krishna, Jesus Christ, and the Buddha. So I have 3 lessons here. We're going to go across 3 topics and the knowledge that all 3 of these teachers left for us. And we'll see some of the alignment there and the way of the different approaches, but one singular, very valuable message. And let's start with this one about how we treat others, how we treat the people around us, our family, our co-workers, our neighbors, right? Our children, our spouse, husband, right? So the lesson here, let's start with Lord Shri Krishna, who said, "He who works for me is ever devoted to me, who is attached to nothing and bears ill will to none, not even to a person who may have committed a heinous sin, such a person comes to me." Now Jesus at the height of his agony when he was being crucified, right? He showed compassion for his tormentors. In Luke chapter 23 verse 24 he says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And finally the Buddha said, "Whoever judges others digs a pit for themselves." Right? So let's put all those together. Lord Shri Krishna said, "He who works for me bears ill will to none." And sure enough, Jesus Christ, and in the most difficult moment when he's being, crucified, he doesn't show, he doesn't bear ill will to his tormentors. The opposite, he begins to pray for them. He says, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." All right? He chooses not to judge them, as the Buddha said. Whoever judges others digs a pit for themselves. Right? And that's what Jesus did. He chose not to judge. As a matter of fact, he seeked to understand. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, habit number 5, seek to understand before you can be understood. Jesus was showing understanding of the situation. The perception he took of these people who were humiliating him as he was being crucified, his understanding, his perception made him think they don't know what they're doing. They simply don't know what they're doing. And that's a very extreme example, right? Where someone is your aggressor, they're literally killing you, they're humiliating you, they're laughing at you, right? And even then, Jesus was able to show compassion, right? All of us will not have to be, most of us, will never experience something like that. But it kind of tells us to what extent this compassion is supposed to go, to what extent our seeking of understanding, to what extent the bearing ill will to none really needs to go to, right? So, very important there. All right, now let's talk about death. Oof, right? So death. First, Shri Krishna said, "For certain is the death of the born, and certain is the birth of the dead. Therefore, what is unavoidable, thou shalt not regret." And Jesus, when he sent his disciples to look for the last sheep of Israel, with the intention of driving out impure spirits, healing the sick, and raising the dead, he said to his disciples in Matthew chapters 10, verse 28, he said, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul." And the Buddha described death as the greatest of all teachers, the most important manifestation of impermanence. So again, Lord Shri Krishna is talking about the certainty of death of the born, right? We all understand that. Everything that is born must die. But he also talked about the certainty of the birth of the dead. Right? And Jesus, that's what Jesus described as the soul that cannot be killed. Right? He can kill your body. Don't be afraid of those that can kill your body, but not your soul. So this birth of the dead is the soul that Jesus told the disciples that cannot be killed. And also the impermanence that the Buddha spoke of. Right? This impermanence is the soul is that energy that can't be destroyed. It's that impermanence that, like that you burn that becomes particles in the atmosphere, particles in the atmosphere that can become the cloud that can become the rain that can be part of the soil that can become the tree, right? That's that impermanence, that we want always things to be the same. We fear death, right? We're afraid of what could be, what is. We want things to be fixed, but everything around us, as the Buddha said, is in a state of impermanence, right? So something with this framework, perhaps we can see death under a new light, right? Okay, third and final one. Now the topic is my followers, my people, right? So in this case, let's start again with Lord Shri Krishna. He said, my worshippers who are ever the holiest fall into 4 classes. 1, those in distress. 2, those who yearn for true knowledge. 3, those who worship me for worldly benefits. And 4, the enlightened, who worship God as his servants and seek nothing in return. For the enlightened, I am exceedingly dear, and he is dear to me. Right? So here Lord Shri Krishna he's acknowledging 4 different types of his worshippers, and he calls them all ever the holiest, right? So he is categorizing, but these are within his ever the holiest type of worship. What's the first one? Those in distress. We all been there, right? We all know those moments when things are not going well, and you're in some scary situations, and what happens? Oh, you remember God now, right? You start praying, and now you're a believer. So even then, he's calling this as group as ever the holiest, right? So now, what was the second one? Those who seek true knowledge. I consider myself one of those people, seekers of true knowledge. Here I am, dispelling the wisdom of 3 different teachers, 3 different gods to be seen by different religions, right? One by Christianity, Jesus Christ, Buddhism, the Buddha, and Hinduism. Shri Krishna is a Hindu god, right? So I am reciting knowledge from these 3 gods. So I do consider myself just someone who yearns for true knowledge, right? But the third group, who are they? Those who worship me for worldly benefits, right? That one's interesting. It's number 3. They're worshipers, right? They're in the church, but they're after certain worldly benefits as well. And finally, the ones that he finds the dearest are the enlightened. Those who seek to worship him and want nothing in return. Right? So something to think about for people who consider themselves, true, strong worshipers that go to church, every week, that follow a God devotedly. This is something interesting, right? A good framework to analyze. Where do I fall in the type of worshiper, right? Even if Lord Shri Krishna isn't my Lord, even then, where do I fall in this type of worship? Let's go to Jesus now. Jesus in Matthew's chapter 11, verse 6, he said, "And blessed is thee who is not offended by me." And in the same chapter, verse 29, he said, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Right? So he's saying, learn from me. Jesus left an amazing example of who to be, right? He wants his followers to be like him. That's why he left. There's so many great stories in the Bible that are in that story form, so you can retain that information, use them as a template for how to behave in the world, right? But let's see some of those examples. Jesus made leaders of fishermen, right? He took Simon, Andrew, James, John, and made them fishers of men. And back in those days, fishermen weren't in good standing with society. They were stinky, they were dirty, they weren't allowed to come into churches, right, to pray and worship God. So they were viewed as less than the rest, right? Even by the people that were, once again, consider themselves worshipers of this high status, right? But to fishermen, because of their situation, they weren't accepting of them. But Jesus made leaders of them. And when he gave the example of the Good Samaritan, he knew that the Samaritans weren't in good political standing with the Jewish, even considered potential enemies. So he gave to his Jewish people the example of the Good Samaritan, because he knew that would kind of stir the pot a bit, right? So once again, he used examples of people that were not in good standing to those he was teaching lessons to, right? Again, it's showing to the extremity that one must be compassionate, that one must, how one must behave, right? We're back to this first example, the first topic about how to behave with others, right? Jesus laid out an example, and then he said, learn from me, right? He acted, he did it, and he said, learn from this. Let's end it now with Buddha. Buddha who but learning from the Buddha is the followers of the Buddha ultimately learn to touch the Buddha within you. They don't seek the Buddha, the God. Instead the purpose is to seek the Buddha nature, right? So in regards to the Buddha, he wasn't asking to be followed, right? He wasn't asking to seek the Buddha. He was asking to seek the Buddha nature within you. The word Buddha in Sanskrit means Bhut, which means he who is awake, right? He who is awake. So to be awake is to be aware, to be mindful, to be in the present moment, right? So seeking your Buddha nature is to be awake, is to be able to live in the now, to live mindfully, right? To not live in the past, reliving the anxiety and the fear and the anger and the depression of the past, not leaving the anxiety of the future, which is uncertain and certainly not here yet, right? Living here. So the Buddha, the worshippers of the Buddha, the followers of the Buddha, those who find the Buddha nature within you, learn to live in the now, to live mindfully, right? To practice mindfulness in everything they do. You can practice mindfulness in your walking. You can practice mindfulness while you do dishes. You can practice mindfulness while you drive, right? And it is only to be present. And you can bring yourself back to the present moment through your breath, like meditation, right? So once again, the Buddha nature is something that you find within you. Okay, so I hope this lessons have shed some light into some very important topics, from three different completely areas of the world, lords of the people, right? And I think across all three, we find an aligned message that we can all incorporate in our lives. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.